Hello, I'm Dustin, and this is the introduction video for what I hope will be a series of YouTube videos about my garden and gardening generally. I'm not going to focus on what you ought to do. Rather, I'm going to focus on what I'm doing, what I've done, and how it turns out, and maybe why I did it in the first place. So you're not going to see 100% successful gardening, you're going to see gardening. Going to get some failures and success, well, hopefully some successes in there for you. This is my third year gardening in this garden, so I already have some beds made. Basically what I want to do with this channel is I want to just focus on what's happening here. In different climates, you're going to do things at different times and possibly in different ways. This is just about what I'm doing in my climate. So it's not exactly an instructional video, although I'm sure I'm going to give you a lot of mistakes to learn from. So you're welcome. And hopefully some successes to learn from as well. I plan to do this two ways. So we're going to do kind of a journal style thing, like what I'm doing right now, where I just talk to you about what's gone on this month. And then hopefully I'm going to have enough material from the recordings I do to kind of make a compilation specific video about, say, building and preparing a raised bed, or planting asparagus, although I've already done all the interesting part of that and now we're just waiting for them to come up for the first time. Or how to train tomatoes up a stake. I know there are already tons of videos out there about all of the things I'm going to talk about, and that's okay. They're all going to be a little bit different. Maybe I'm going to hit on one of those details that someone else missed and it helps it all come together for you. Or maybe not. Maybe you'll need to go to somewhere else and find the details I've missed. That seems more likely. Remind me if I forget to slap links to my favorite gardening YouTube channels so far in the description of this video, and feel free in the comments to let me know what your favorite gardening videos are and why. There's actually some politics in gardening. I'm not going to touch that either. If you're an organic gardener, great. If you like to use the maximum possible amount of chemicals in your garden, great. I'm a biologist and a chemist, so I tend to come down on the side of chemicals because everything is made of chemicals. But I'm not going to tell you how to garden, just how I'm doing it. And most of what I do can be adapted to either include more or fewer herbicides or more or fewer pesticides. Although my garden is small enough that you will find I don't need to use a lot of pesticides, because it is actually not that big an energy expense for me to go in and hand pick the caterpillars off my plants, even though, you know, I don't have an objection to using pesticides on there instead. My audience is probably going to be bigger than I intended, because right now we're in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic, and there are a lot of people getting into gardening that weren't into gardening originally. So hopefully, maybe I'll also be able to help you guys, you new gardeners, feel a little better about your own garden by watching my mistakes. And you can see it's possible for things to go horribly wrong and still enjoy gardening. And that's really what it's about. If you're survival gardening right now and you're just getting into gardening, that's especially important that you consider your failures as something you can chalk up to experience, because survival gardening is stressful. I've never gardened to survive. This has always been, I grow vegetables that I think are tastier from the garden than from the grocery store, or cheaper from the garden than from the grocery store. For example, the high dollar crops like tomatoes or eggplants or zucchini, well, those are low dollar, but you can produce a bunch of them in the garden, so we can save money on those. Other crops, not so much. This year I'm going to be gardening a little bit more expansively. I'm going to try to grow more staple foods because I'm a little bit worried about how everything might turn out. I don't know if we're going to wind up in a situation where we are rationing food. I don't know how this pandemic might affect farming in our country or food imports and exports. There's a lot of uncertainty, and so probably like most of you, I'm hedging my bet. So what part of the world am I in? I am in West Valley City, Utah. For everyone outside of Utah, just decide I'm in Salt Lake City. That's the big star on the map of the state, the capital city of the state. This is a pretty urban place, although I lucked out and got a home with a very generous lot, and I'm gradually killing lawn and replacing it with food. Our growing conditions. This is zone 7B. We have days about 180 to 190 days between the last frost of this, the last frost and the first frost. Yeah, so we've got 180 to 190 days for crops to mature. Spring and fall crops don't do very well here because we have very short springs and falls. We have long cold winters and long hot summers mostly. So while I'm growing a number of cold weather crops and hoping that the weather allows me to get some harvest from them, mostly they're taking up space while we wait to get to the warm weather crops. In this valley we have an annual rainfall, average annual precipitation of 20 inches. Mostly it falls as snow, not rain. During the summer we have to irrigate because we don't get hardly any rain. It is good news if you're into solar power. I have solar panels and I think I pay for electricity 2 months out of the year. Soil here is sandy loam, and I have not measured the pH, but in mountainous desert regions like this, or generally along most of the west coast, with the exception of our temperate rainforests to the far northwest, the pH is high. High pH means that your soil is going to have a harder time holding on to nutrients, and plants might struggle a little bit more. So about the raised beds. Raised beds are not necessary here. Generally, raised beds are something you're going to use if you have drainage issues or if you have absolutely terrible soil and you have to build brand new soil on top of it. So if you're in all clay or all sand, you might build a raised bed and plop good soil on top of that so you don't have to spend as much time amending it. I mostly built my raised beds so I have something to sit on while I weed, and because I think they're pretty.